Today's Monday, October 1st, and basically today, as you can see from our learning goal, we're going to spend our day reviewing what we already learned and what we know about working with place value and about decimals to help us prepare for our Module 1 test, which will be tomorrow. Tomorrow, as I've said many times, you will be taking your Module 1 test. It covers 1.1 all the way through 1.16. You'll also be turning in your math workbook to me. So there's a couple things you need to do to make sure you're ready to turn it in. The first one is you need to make sure your name and number are on your math workbook so that I know whose math workbook I'm looking at. The second thing is you don't need to necessarily complete every single problem in that math workbook, but when I collect it, I'm looking to see, did you at least complete the problems I asked you to complete in class? And did you go back and do extra practice problems when you needed them? Okay, very good. This is an excellent problem because, let's take a look. It tests your ability to draw a tape diagram. It tests your ability to add decimals. It tests your ability to subtract decimals. It also tests your ability to divide decimals and understand word problems to know what the units needs to be. Do you see how this is a very complete problem that basically tests all the skills we learned in Module 1? You need to understand place value in order to do all of these things, don't you? Okay, so this is the kind of problem that you want to practice solving. All right, mathematicians, you know you have a math test tomorrow. How do you study when you know you have a test coming up? What are some things you can do to study? Tarun, what's one thing you can do? Huh? Why is Zern.org helpful? Not Sears.org, but Zern. It's because Zern is not a word. Why is Zern.org helpful, Tarun? It goes along with what we've learned. What's another thing you can do to study, Maddie?
You can also finish up your workbook.
Ooh, workbook problems. Absolutely. What's another thing you can do to study, Shivani? Go through your notes, math notes. Awesome. And maybe rewatch videos, right? Okay, what's another thing you can do to study, Joseph?
Print out worksheets.
Ooh, you can print out the worksheets from the Grade 5 Pandas website. Very good. Now, Module 1 through Module 16 is a lot of modules. If I were to sit down and do this entire workbook to study, it would be useful, but it would take me a long time. How do you know how you need to zoom in and what you need to focus on? What are some things you could do? Maddie?
Review your other tests to see what you need.
You could look back at your old tests and old exit tickets to see what did I mess up on before and how can I make sure I show I've learned it since then. Very good. Another thing you could do is you could go through and see what were the main topics and which lessons were those topics. Okay, so today I want to teach you one good way to study is to think about the main topics and to look for one or two sample problems of those topics. Today you'll be making your very own study guide by looking at the different main topics that were taught in Module 1 and then picking out one or two sample problems that best exemplify or best show that problem. Lessons 1.1 through 1.4 were kind of all about the same topic. So look back at those lessons in your workbook or your math notebook and see if you can look at the learning goals, look at the types of problems we did in class. What were the main topics that we learned about in lessons 1.1 through 1.4? So on your study guide, you'll want to write that lessons 1.1 through 1.4 were mostly about multiplying and dividing by powers of 10 and also learning about exponents. Now that you know the main topics, your job is to go through lessons 1.1 and through 1.4 in your workbook and find maybe one or two problems that you think best would test this. If you were a test maker and you could only choose from these workbook problems, what problems would you choose to see if your students know how to multiply and divide by powers of 10 and how to use exponents? You don't need to copy the problem down onto your study guide. What I want you to do is you want to tell me the lesson, like lesson 1.3, and then what problem number. Write that down. Find maybe two problems, one that shows multiplying and dividing by powers of 10, and one that shows exponents. Pretend you're a test maker. Go. By finding questions that best test to see if you know how to do that, that shows you that that's a problem you want to redo. Who has a problem that shows if a student knows how to multiply or divide by powers of 10? Niv? What lesson and what number? So EM lesson 1.2 and what number? Number 1. Go back right now and look at lesson 1.2, number 1, and see if it tests how to multiply and divide by powers of 10. Next, lessons 1.5 and 1.6 are about the same topic. See if you can look at those lessons in your notebook or your workbook and determine what was the main topic or the concept that was being taught in lessons 1.5 to 1.6. Lessons 1.5 and 1.6 was mostly about writing decimals using expanded, word, unit, and standard form. It also was about comparing decimals. So you know what your next job is as a study guide maker or a test maker. Look for one problem that would show if your students know how to write the expanded, word, standard, and unit form of decimals. And look for one problem that would show if your students know how to compare decimals. And write those down on your study guide. Technically would have been 1.7 through 1.8, but we didn't do that. We did Go Math instead, 3.4. So what was the main topic in Go Math 3.4? Tarun? Very good. It was all about rounding decimals. So now see if you can pick out one or two of the best, most challenging problems you would expect to see on a test to see if your 5th grade students know how to round to decimals. So now what we've done is we've grouped those lessons into similar topics so you know what to focus on. Just writing down EM 1.16 number 5, that's not going to teach me anything about tape diagrams and word problems. What I have to do is I have to go back and do those problems. Do you see how you now have a plan for yourself of what you can work on as you study for this test? If you can do all of those problems we wrote down, do you think you'll do well on the test tomorrow? Probably, if you can do all those concepts. So you just made your very own study guide by listing out the different problems that you think you should review, okay? I'm going to give you the exact same thing. Basically, another year of old students, what we did is we went through lesson by lesson. You can see right here, we've written the lessons and then the big concepts, yes? Then just like we did together as a class, my old students, gave me example problems. These are example problems that came from your workbook problems. Okay, but they're the problems that they decided, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they decided these are the best problems that show that big concept. So what I'm going to give you today is a study guide that has, once again, the lessons and the topics, and then example problems. So today, to help you study, you can work on your problems that you decided for your own study guide. You can also work through these problems on this study guide, or you can do one of the other things we talked about, such as Zern or look over your math notes.